Most statues want to be understood. That's the whole point of them. You carve a face everyone recognizes, a pose everyone knows, a story that's already sitting in the viewer's head before they even finish reading the plaque. A warrior, a martyr, a king. The image does the talking, and the meaning arrives instantly, but once in a while, an artist breaks that contract on purpose. He builds something flawless with his hands and then locks the meaning away where nobody can reach it. Not the critics, not the people who commissioned it. Not even, it seems, the artist himself ever bothered to hand over the key. That's exactly what's sitting in a garden outside Paris right now. A carved figure of Jupiter, ruler of the heavens, perched calmly on top of a sphinx. There's no scroll, no legend, no dusty text anywhere in the ancient world that tells this story. Nobody before this sculptor ever imagined pairing these two figures together. He dreamed it up, chiseled it into marble, and then said nothing else about it for the rest of his life. The piece is known simply as Jupiter and the Sphinx, and depending on who you ask, it's either one of the greatest artistic riddles in Europe or a joke that only one man was ever in on. To understand why this pairing is so unsettling, you need to understand what a sphinx actually represented to the people who first told stories about it. Forget the friendly stone lion crouched outside Egyptian tombs for a second. That's a different creature entirely, and we'll get to it. The sphinx that matters here is the Greek one, a winged, female monster who camped outside the city of Thebes and refused to let travelers pass unless they solved her puzzle. Her question was brutal in its simplicity. What creature walks on 4 legs at dawn, 2 legs by midday and 3 legs by dusk? Fail to answer and she killed you on the spot. It took Oedipus to finally crack it. The answer was humanity itself, crawling as an infant, walking upright in adulthood and hobbling along with a cane in old age. The instant he said it out loud, something remarkable happened. The Sphinx didn't just lose, she ceased to exist. Solved, she hurled herself off her perch and died, because her entire being was built on the fact that her riddle had no answer. Take that away, and there's nothing left of her. So here's the puzzle the sculptor handed us. He took Jupiter, the single most powerful being in the classical universe, the god who commands lightning and rules Olympus without argument, and sat him directly on top of a creature that only survives as long as a question stays open. It's a collision of opposites baked into one image, total certainty resting on top of total unresolvable mystery. And the man who dreamed up this contradiction didn't leave behind so much as a sentence explaining why. That man was Auguste Préault, and for most of his career, the French art establishment treated him like a problem to be avoided. After the political upheaval of 1830, mobs destroyed his studio and smashed his plaster models to pieces. For close to 2 decades afterward, the official salon, essentially the only real gatekeeper to a sculptor's career in France at the time, refused to show his work at all. He kept himself afloat doing whatever jobs came his way. Gravestones, memorials, commissioned busts nobody would remember. But the years of rejection shaped him. Critics who eventually came around to admiring him gave him a nickname that stuck: the poet of anguish, a sculptor whose specialty was despair, violence, and dread rendered in stone better than almost anyone working at the time. When he died, his reputation died with him for over 100 years, buried under layers of art history until a museum retrospective finally dragged his name back into daylight. It's almost fitting, a man obsessed with the unresolved ended up as an unresolved figure himself. That backstory matters because it tells you Préault was not the type of artist handed a royal commission and expected to play it safe. And yet that's precisely what happened near the end of his life. The imperial court awarded him a prestigious project for the gardens of the Fontainebleau Palace. Somebody who spent his career sculpting torment and grief was suddenly asked to decorate a royal garden. And instead of giving them something pretty and forgettable, he handed them an unsolvable riddle in stone. Look closely at the figure and the tension is obvious. This is supposed to be the most secure being in existence, a god who answers to no one, yet his muscles are coiled tight, his posture strained, like he's bracing under some invisible weight rather than lounging in triumph. Then there's the face, and this is where it gets stranger. Préault didn't invent Jupiter's features from scratch. He lifted them from an ancient portrait of Mausolus, a ruler so consumed with the fear of being forgotten that he built himself a tomb so extravagant it became one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, and gave the English language the very word mausoleum. So the reigning king of all the gods is quite literally wearing the borrowed face of a dead man obsessed with his own memory. That's not a small detail to leave unexplained. And Preo didn't stop there. Standing near Jupiter's Sphinx is a matching sculpture. Venus, goddess of love, seated on a sphinx of her own. Her pose isn't original either. It's lifted almost directly from Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel ceiling, echoing the outstretched arm of God reaching toward Adam. Desire and thunder, positioned on either side of a garden path, each balanced on top of the same impossible riddle, and no placard anywhere told visitors how any of it was meant to connect. Here's what makes the whole thing dizzying. Almost every individual piece of this work has a clear, traceable origin. Jupiter's face comes from a Turkish tomb built for a forgotten king. Venus's pose comes from a Renaissance masterpiece painted on a chapel ceiling in Rome. The gods themselves come from Roman mythology, and the Sphinx comes from Greek legend. Everything is borrowed, except the single idea that ties it all together, which appears nowhere else in recorded history. Préault built something entirely new out of parts that were all individually thousands of years old. Then reality delivered its own twist to the story. Préault modeled these sculptures in 1868 for the court of Napoleon III, but the stone versions weren't even fully in place before the empire that ordered them started falling apart. In 1870, France went to war with Prussia and was crushed within weeks. Napoleon III himself was captured on the battlefield, and the Second Empire simply ceased to exist. The court that had commissioned a monument to a thundering, all-powerful god didn't survive long enough to walk past it. The throne the sculpture was meant to glorify was empty before the stone had even finished settling. So picture standing in that garden today. Above you sits a god wearing a dead man's face, balanced on a monster that only exists through unanswered questions, commissioned by a government that collapsed within 2 years of ordering it, carved by a man who took every secret about its meaning to his own grave. Every theory anyone offers fits the evidence just well enough, and not one of them can ever be proven. In the original myth, the Sphinx dies the second her riddle gets solved. Préault, whether by accident or design, built one that can never be solved at all. Which means, technically, it can never die either. It just sits there in that quiet French garden, still waiting. So here's the real question worth sitting with. What do you think a lifelong outcast was trying to say by handing an empire he barely respected a riddle it could never crack? Drop your theory in the comments. I read every single one, and I want to hear what you think this sculpture actually means.